There's a lie carved into stone, printed on coins, and tattooed on soldiers from ancient Rome to modern wars. SPQR, four innocent-looking letters. They appear on monuments, Hollywood films, even sewer lids in modern-day Rome. Most people think they stand for democracy, the Senate, and the people of Rome. But here's the truth no one told you. SPQR was never for the people. It was used against them. From the very beginning, this symbol was a performance, a beautiful illusion crafted by Rome's elite to hide the rot beneath the marble. It sold the image of a republic while silencing dissent, crushing uprisings, and branding every imperial conquest as a noble cause. Historians call it a motto. Emperors used it like a weapon, and for over 2,000 years, the world kept falling for it. Because symbols don't need to be honest, they just need to be believed. And SPQR, it became the most successful political illusion in history. This isn't just about Rome. It's a lens into how empires use words to outlive their crimes, something we see repeated across the entire history of the Roman Empire. So the next time you see SPQR on a flag, a statue, or a soldier's patch, ask yourself, are you seeing history, or are you still trapped in its lie? Welcome to Shadows of Ancient History. Let's unmask the true empire behind four eternal letters. It began with an idea, not of gods or kings, but of the res publica, the public thing. A republic not ruled by one man, but by law, consensus, and the voice of the Senate and people of Rome, Senatus Populusque Romanus. Four words that, together, became an acronym carved into triumphal arches, stamped on the shields of soldiers, and whispered in the Senate's vaulted chamber. SPQR. But that ideal, historians agree, was compromised almost from the beginning. The Republic claimed to be the will of the people, yet real power was concentrated in the hands of a few elite patrician families. In reality, the people had no voice unless they were wealthy enough to buy one. And so SPQR became not a promise, but a performance. Take the year 133 BCE, a moment remembered less for its symbolism and more for its silence. When Tiberius Gracchus, a tribune of the plebs, tried to redistribute land to Rome's poor, the Senate responded not with debate, but with daggers. He was clubbed to death by fellow senators inside the Curia. No trial, no vote, no voice for the people. The acronym SPQR still hung above them as they wiped the blood from their robes. Historians still debate whether this act marked the beginning of the end for the Republic. But one thing is clear, SPQR no longer stood for balance. It stood for control. It was etched into stone even as the stones beneath the Republic began to crack. The strange thing? No public outcry followed. No temples burned, because the machine worked. The populace had been taught that Rome itself, its grandeur, its rituals, its military glory was synonymous with virtue. And SPQR was the sacred symbol that cloaked all sins. Even the most mundane objects bore its mark. Clay pipes used to carry water bore the inscription. Military standards shimmered with it. Public restrooms in Pompeii. Some scholars believe SPQR may have been casually scratched into walls or tiles, but direct evidence is rare and debated. It became so commonly displayed on monuments, coins, banners that few ever questioned its true meaning. Except one man. In the year 91 BCE, Marcus Livius Drusus, another tribune, attempted sweeping reforms. His allies claimed he could restore the Republic's integrity. His enemies claimed he was a demagogue. One evening, while walking home, he was stabbed by an unknown assailant. No one was ever charged. According to later accounts, graffiti allegedly appeared. SPQR protects the killers. While historians dispute its authenticity, the phrase captured the mood of betrayal. But the message captured the growing public cynicism. Was it real, or planted later by angry supporters? Historians can't agree, but the message was clear. Symbols now meant more than justice. The Roman Republic became, in essence, a performance stage for the masses. The Senate still met, but its power dwindled. Elections were held, but the results were managed. And SPQR kept showing up on banners, coins, and even public monuments that commemorated battles not yet won. Why? Because symbols outlast truth. And because Rome had learned the most important lesson of empire, people don't need to be silenced if they can be distracted. In this illusion, SPQR played its role perfectly. It was the Republic's security blanket, a golden acronym that whispered, "You are free," even as the doors were quietly locked from the inside. The Republic trudged forward, brittle but proud, surrounded by marble but hollow at the core. But symbols, no matter how sacred, couldn't stop what came next. One man crossed a river. Julius Caesar's march across the Rubicon in 49 BCE would become one of history's most infamous acts of rebellion. He entered Italy with an army at his back, still claiming to fight for SPQR. He claimed to restore order to a republic that no longer functioned, but in truth, he lit the funeral pyre. Curiously, even as Caesar eroded the last structures of the republic, he never rejected SPQR. In fact, he embraced it. Coins minted during his reign bore his face on one side and SPQR on the other, as if to say, "I am Rome now," and Rome believed him. By the time the Senate stabbed Caesar to death in 44 BCE, ironically claiming to protect the Republic, they did so in the shadow of a banner that still bore those 4 letters. The dream was dead. But the slogan adapted. It survived in stone and silence, in the theater of legitimacy. Because in Rome, symbols didn't die with their meanings. They adapted. They evolved. They endured. The Republic had fallen, but SPQR had only just begun. When the Republic died, no trumpet sounded. No temple collapsed. No public funeral was held for the idea of collective rule. Instead, the transition came wrapped in silk togas and careful language. Augustus-born Gaius Octavius did not call himself king. He called himself princeps, the first among equals. The Senate, still adorned with SPQR banners, voted him extraordinary powers, not once, but again and again, until the votes no longer mattered. The empire had begun, and yet SPQR remained. It was an astonishing sleight of hand. Across the empire, monuments went up in Augustus' name, but always accompanied by the words Senatus Populusque Romanus. Historians still debate whether this was a cunning propaganda strategy or simply a holdover of bureaucratic habit. Either way, SPQR was transformed from a political principle into a ceremonial seal. Its meaning shifted, but its power deepened. On military standards, SPQR blazed above eagle insignia as Roman legions marched to expand the empire's borders. When these troops entered Gaul, Judea, and Egypt, they were not invading in the name of an emperor, they were bringing order on behalf of the Senate and people of Rome, a fiction cast in bronze. The strangest case of this appeared in AD 70, after the brutal siege of Jerusalem. The city was burned, its temple destroyed, and its sacred relics looted. But on the Arch of Titus, built to commemorate the victory, the carved inscription still thanked SPQR. Not Titus, not Vespasian, but SPQR. The people whose army had flattened a holy city still felt the need to blame or bless a symbol long divorced from the people it once claimed to represent. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Augustus created a new religion, himself. Temples were raised to his genius, a living God walking among mortals. Yet even in the most extravagant dedications, SPQR remained carved into the base of statues, as if to remind citizens that the gods now served the Republic even as it quietly served them. It was no longer about governance, it was theater. Public ceremonies became grander. Gladiator games grew more elaborate. Imperial parades called triumphs featured bound prisoners, exotic animals, and entire conquered cities paraded through Roman streets. And still, SPQR banners flew above the spectacle. The illusion had reached perfection. The Senate still met, but decisions came from the emperor's private chamber. The people still voted, but only for positions that no longer held power. And the legions once loyal to the Republic had become personal armies to the throne. A strange event occurred under the reign of Emperor Caligula that crystallized this shift. According to contemporary accounts, Caligula intended to appoint his horse Incitatus as consul, a detail most historians now view as satire or exaggeration, but symbolically revealing. While modern historians suspect satire or exaggeration, the deeper truth is hard to ignore. Caligula mocked the Senate, the Republic, and by extension, SPQR itself. And yet no edicts were issued to remove the sacred acronym. It remained etched in marble. Why? Because even as it was mocked, SPQR was indispensable. It made tyranny feel familiar. It made empire feel earned. The ritual use of SPQR became so ingrained that even emperors who despised the Senate still invoked its name. Nero, whose reign was marred by fire and murder, still had coins minted bearing SPQR next to his own head, crowned in laurels. The irony burned brighter than the city. As provinces were stripped for taxes, rebellions crushed, and citizens fed to lions in the Colosseum, the symbol of democracy marched onward, embroidered on banners and cast in stone. And the people, they didn't rebel against the letters, they worshiped them. Because over time, SPQR had become more than a lie. It had become a memory of an ideal that never truly existed but was needed so badly, it had to be preserved at all costs. In Roman baths, mosaics spelled it out in colored tile. In marketplaces, plaques invoked it in blessings. And in the military camps at the edge of empire in cold Britain or dry Syria, soldiers painted it onto walls to remind themselves they served something eternal. It was a comfort in a cage. Because no one could rebel against SPQR without being accused of betraying Rome itself. Even as emperors grew crueler, wars became bloodier, and taxes crushed the poor, or SPQR stood as the excuse and the absolution. A phrase that said, "This is not tyranny, this is tradition." It was brilliant, it was devastating, it was unstoppable, until cracks began to show. The legions became more loyal to generals than to the empire. Local governors acted like kings. The provinces were bloated with bureaucracy, yet hollowed of hope. And the people began to forget what SPQR actually meant. They only knew what it symbolized: eternity. But eternity, like empire, is a story people tell themselves when they fear the end. The empire had changed, but the symbol had not. And in that stillness, the fall began. The deeper Rome drifted from its republican past, the louder it invoked SPQR, like a fading echo repeated to drown out the silence. The symbol became both prayer and propaganda. But Rome didn't just rule by law and legion, it ruled by belief. The empire had discovered something older than warfare, more lasting than architecture: ritual. Not merely ceremonies, but engineered experiences that reinforced identity. And SPQR was woven into the heart of them all. The triumphal arches were not built to last, they were built to remind. Soldiers marched beneath them, bearing loot from foreign lands, while citizens tossed laurel leaves and chanted the name of the emperor. But if you look closely, the arches were crowned not with his name, but with those 4 letters, SPQR. This ritual repetition wasn't accidental, it was designed. Historians still debate whether Rome's reliance on visual propaganda was a sign of insecurity or genius. But what's undeniable is that every forum, every bathhouse, every milestone on the Appian Way repeated the mantra. It was psychological warfare in marble. In the forum, senators in spotless togas debated policy beneath bronze SPQR plaques. But outside, in the shadowed alleys of Subura, citizens starved, debts multiplied, and riots brewed. The marble mask no longer matched the flesh beneath. Still, the performances went on. In 212 AD, the Emperor Caracalla issued the Constitutio Antoniniana, granting Roman citizenship to nearly every free man in the empire. On the surface, it was a benevolent act, an extension of inclusion. But scholars suggest another motive: taxes. More citizens meant more tax revenue. Still, every proclamation bore the SPQR seal, as if the Republic had spoken, and the people believed it. Or perhaps they wanted to. That's the strange power of ritual. It doesn't need to be true, it only needs to feel familiar. Even Rome's military rituals followed suit. Each legion swore oaths not to the emperor alone, but to the Senate and people of Rome. In a theater of loyalty, SPQR was the script all actors were forced to recite. One of the more curious episodes in this performance took place in the eastern provinces during the reign of Emperor Elagabalus. A high priest from Syria turned emperor, Elagabalus attempted to replace Jupiter with a foreign sun god and marched his deity's black meteorite relic into Rome. Chaos erupted in the Senate. Sacrifices were held in secret. Yet through it all, official decrees still began with Senatus Populusque Romanus. It was as if the spell couldn't be broken. Even the gods themselves had to wear the badge of the Republic. Public art reflected this obsession. Statues of emperors dressed as guises bore inscriptions like Divine Caesar Defender of SPQR. This wasn't irony, this was intention. Rome wrapped divinity and democracy into one mythic image, and it worked. The masses saw what they were told to see. And if they didn't, bread and circuses would fill the gaps. The Colosseum became the crown jewel of these illusions. Funded with plundered Jewish gold and built for Roman spectacle, it seated over 50,000 spectators. Above its entrances, SPQR engraved for all time. Inside, tigers, Christians, slaves, and soldiers spilled blood to sanctify empire through entertainment. It was horror masked as honor. But the crowd cheered because ritual doesn't just distract, it indoctrinates. And as long as SPQR hovered above the gore, the people could pretend it was all still for them. One historian coined the term the performance of participation to describe this era. Citizens no longer governed, but were made to feel as if they did. Emperors ruled by decree, but with the careful choreography of senatorial approval. Legions burned cities, but only after invoking the Senate's will. Reality bent beneath the weight of the lie. But not everyone believed it. In the outer provinces, Numidia, Britannia, Dacia rebellions simmered. Inscriptions in local dialects began to omit SPQR. Murals defaced it. Coins were melted down, replaced by regional kings claiming divine right over imperial law. One strange event occurred in the North African city of Tamugadi. In a remote corner of a ruined Roman bathhouse, archaeologists discovered graffiti scrawled in Latin. SPQR, SEDE quis audit, SPQR, but who listens? A whisper from the edge of the empire. By then the empire had grown too large. Too many tongues, too many too many truths. But still, too few symbols. So Rome clung to the one that worked. Even in decay, SPQR was painted, stamped, burned into the consciousness of a dying machine. And maybe that was the point, because even if the roads cracked, even if the Senate withered, even if the emperor was a madman in golden slippers, SPQR would remain. And as long as it did, the illusion would live on. By the 3rd century, the empire was crumbling, but the symbol was not. Civil wars tore across its provinces. Plagues emptied its cities. The economy buckled under hyperinflation. With coins so debased they were barely metal. Soldiers became kingmakers. Emperors rose and fell within months. And yet, many of them minted new coins bearing the letters SPQR, especially during transitions, civil wars, or times when legitimacy needed to be displayed. It had become a ghost, a symbol haunting a system that no longer functioned. Historians still debate whether this persistence was a desperate attempt to claim legitimacy or simply the inertia of empire. But either way, SPQR had outlived the world that birthed it. The crisis of the 3rd century was a kaleidoscope of chaos. In just 50 years, over 20 emperors seized the throne, many assassinated by their own guards. The Senate existed, technically, but its influence was ceremonial, not political. Its decrees read like eulogies. Still, every public inscription echoed the same words: Senatus Populusque Romanus. The people, they were no longer the audience. They were the collateral. In the provinces, local leaders no longer waited for Rome. They raised armies, levied taxes, even printed their own coins. But in an eerie twist, Many still included SPQR, possibly to avoid the appearance of full rebellion. It was rebellion with plausible deniability. One strange case unfolded in Palmyra. Zenobia, the warrior queen of that desert city, declared independence from Rome in the late 260s. She conquered Egypt and parts of Asia Minor, styling herself Empress of the East. Yet even as she ruled a breakaway empire, official documents from her court still bore SPQR seals. Not out of loyalty, but power, because even outside Rome, SPQR still held psychological weight. It was a brand, and brands survive. Even Diocletian, the reforming emperor who split the empire into East and West to save it from internal collapse, preserved SPQR in all public monuments. He restructured power into a complex tetrarchy, 4 rulers sharing authority, but let the Senate keep its ceremonial glow. It made the corpse of the Republic look embalmed. And so as the West weakened and the East solidified under Constantinople, the Roman Empire became less a city and more an idea. But even ideas decay. In 410 AD, the Visigoths sacked Rome. It was the first time in 800 years that the city had fallen to foreign hands. Panic spread across the empire like wildfire. Saint Jerome reportedly wrote, "If Rome can perish, what can be safe?" But even as the city burned, some surviving inscriptions still proclaimed the dominion of SPQR written in stone, ignored by fire. Rome would never fully recover, not spiritually, not symbolically. Yet the Senate lingered on. Hollowed of power, it continued to issue decrees, record minutes, and publish rituals that no one obeyed. It had become a museum that refused to admit it was closed. Still, every letterhead bore SPQR, because without it, there was nothing left to believe in. A curious moment came in 475 AD, when the teenage emperor Romulus Augustulus took the throne. His name Romulus, like the mythical founder of Rome, and Augustus, like the first emperor, felt like fate's final joke. He ruled barely a year. In 476, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed him. There was no grand battle, no imperial last stand. Romulus was quietly sent into exile. The Western Roman Empire was finished. But was it? Even after that fateful fall, the Senate met for a few more decades. Even Odoacer issued edicts using SPQR. The Ostrogoths who followed did the same. So did Charlemagne centuries later. So would Mussolini in the 20th century, because SPQR had ceased to be a slogan of a state. It was now the costume of legitimacy, an echo anyone could wear. And so the system died, but the symbol refused to. And that perhaps is the most Roman thing of all. By the time the Roman Empire had crumbled into dust, SPQR was no longer a tool of governance, it was a relic of myth. But relics, like ghosts, don't fade. They linger. And in the centuries that followed, SPQR would rise again, not as a beacon of democracy, but as a symbol to conjure power from memory. In the medieval world, the shadow of Rome was everywhere. Bishops quoted Roman law, kings traced their bloodlines to Caesar, and city-states hungry for legitimacy dusted off the old acronym like a forgotten crown. Rome, the city, had shrunk. It was no longer the center of empire, but a withered outpost ruled by popes and contested by nobles. Yet even in its decline, it still invoked SPQR. Municipal documents in the 12th century proudly bore the letters claiming the authority of the ancient Senate and people of Rome, even though neither truly existed. Historians still debate whether this was mere nostalgia or an intentional effort to awaken imperial memory. But either way, it worked. Tourists and pilgrims alike marveled at the engraved acronym on manhole covers, fountains, and municipal buildings. The city had learned, even ruins can speak power if the script is legible. One of the strangest revivals came under Mussolini in the 1930s. Fascist Italy draped itself in Roman imagery, eagles, fasces, laurel wreaths, and resurrected SPQR as a nationalist brand. The acronym appeared on uniforms, flags, even park benches. Rome, once again, was declared eternal. And yet, the democracy it once pretended to represent was nowhere to be found. SPQR had become a slogan detached from its substance. A shell, a spell. Still soldiers marched under its letters. Still parades passed beneath its banners. Still, crowds cheered for it. Even in modern times, SPQR endures not as a governing system, but as a cultural artifact, worn more for memory than meaning. Tourists in Rome snap selfies beside the letters, unaware they stand in the shadow of a thousand-year illusion. T-shirts, tattoos, coffee mugs, SPQR has been merchandised into immortality. And here is the haunting part. It still works. In 2003, a group of modern Italian paratroopers deployed to Iraq bore the letters SPQR on their insignia, evoking Roman legacy in a foreign desert. Across the world, neo-fascist groups invoke it. Fantasy novels borrow its grandeur. Even in science fiction, SPQR returns as a symbol of empire reborn. Because symbols don't die with empires. They mutate, they migrate, they wait. In SPQR, it has outlived kings, Gahaus, republics, and revolutions. It has served democrats, tyrants, popes, and warlords. It has meant everything, and therefore it means nothing. But that's the genius. Because when a symbol means nothing, it can become anything. And that is the fallacy of eternal empires. They may collapse, but their ghosts find new bodies to inhabit. The wind moves gently through broken marble. The crowds are long gone, the banners turn to dust, and yet the symbol remains. SPQR, chiseled into arches that no longer hold up roofs, stamped onto coins buried in centuries of soil, echoed in speeches, in slogans, in silence. Rome has fallen again and again throughout the entire history of the Roman Empire. And yet somehow its emblem still stands unbowed by time, untouched by truth. Perhaps that's the secret no empire wants you to know. Power doesn't have to be real. It only has to be remembered. The Republic was flawed, the Empire was brutal, but SPQR was beautiful because it gave people something to believe in, even if it was a lie. Even if it was a memory of a lie. We tell ourselves that symbols die with their empires, but maybe they don't. Maybe they only wait until someone needs them again. And so, the story of SPQR does not end in ashes. It lingers in whispers, a ghost carved into stone. And when you walk past it etched on some forgotten wall in Rome, you may not hear the crowds, but listen closely, and you might hear the echo of a lie, pretending to be eternal.